Story 1. The Stranger in the Attic. Window. My name is Frank. I'm a retired carpenter living in rural Vermont. After my wife, Eleanor, passed away from a stroke 3 years ago, the silence in our big farmhouse became almost unbearable. It's just me and Buster, my aging golden retriever, trying to fill up rooms that hold too many memories. Eleanor's sewing room was on the 3rd floor, a converted attic space with a single dormer window that looked out over the orchard. After the funeral, I closed the door to that room and hadn't opened it since. I couldn't bear to see her half-finished quilts. It started in late November. The trees were bare, and the first snow had dusted the fields. I was out late, stacking firewood on the porch around 10 p.m. I paused to catch my breath and looked up at the house. The moon was bright, reflecting off the snow. I glanced at the 3rd-story window. The light was on. My heart skipped a beat. I knew for a fact I hadn't been up there. I don't even go to the 2nd floor much anymore. I sleep in the guest room downstairs because my knees are bad. I stared at the window. A shadow moved across the yellow square of light. It was a silhouette, slender, pacing back and forth. Eleanor? I whispered, before my rational brain kicked in. Don't be stupid, Frank. Ghosts don't turn on lamps. Anger replaced the shock. Someone was in my house. Someone was in her room. I grabbed my splitting maul from the woodpile. Buster, heel, I commanded. We went inside. The house was silent. I climbed the stairs, wincing at the creaks. When I got to the 3rd-floor landing, the door to the sewing room was closed, but I could see the light spilling out from underneath. I gripped the maul. I threw the door open. The room was empty. The lamp on the sewing table was on, but the window was open. The cold winter air was rushing in, fluttering the fabric scraps on the floor. I rushed to the window and looked down. It's a 30-foot drop to the frozen ground. No ladder. No footprints in the snow below. I searched the closet, under the daybed. Nothing. I told myself maybe I left the light on years ago and the bulb just never burned out. Maybe the wind blew the window latch. I was grasping at straws. I locked the window, turned off the light, and went downstairs. I didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, I came home from the grocery store. Buster didn't greet me at the door. Buster? I called out. I found him in the kitchen, cowering under the table, whining. He was terrified. And on the kitchen counter, sitting right next to my fruit bowl, was a spool of red thread. Eleanor's thread. From the attic. I grabbed my shotgun from the gun safe. I swept the house room by room. Nothing. The attic door was closed. The light was off. I called the sheriff. Deputy Miller came out, looked around, drank a cup of coffee, and told me that grief does funny things to the mind. He thought I was losing it. Old house noises, Frank, he said. Get some rest. I felt humiliated. But I knew I wasn't crazy. That night I set a trap. I sprinkled a thin layer of flour on the floor of the attic landing, right in front of the door. If anyone went in or out, I'd know. I sat in my armchair downstairs with the shotgun across my lap, watching the ceiling. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. Creak. The distinct groan of the 3rd-floor floorboards. Then, a rhythmic thumping. Thump drag. Thump drag. It sounded like someone limping. I moved to the bottom of the stairs. I listened. A voice drifted down the stairwell. It was humming, a lullaby. "Hush, little baby." It was a woman's voice, but it wasn't Eleanor's. It was raspy, broken, like someone who hadn't used their vocal cords in a long time. I quietly climbed the stairs. When I reached the second floor, I looked up at the attic landing. The door was open, and in the flour on the floor, footprints. But they weren't boot prints. They were bare feet. Small, dirty, bare feet. I racked the shotgun. Ch-ch. The humming stopped instantly. "Come out!" I roared. "I'm armed!" Silence. Then, a giggle. A wet, maniacal giggle from the darkness of the attic. I charged up the last flight of stairs. I burst into the room and flipped the light switch. She was crouching in the corner, behind Eleanor's dress form. She was a woman, maybe 30, but she looked feral. Her hair was a matted nest. She was wearing one of Eleanor's old floral nightgowns, which was ripped and stained. She was shivering, hugging her knees. "You're not supposed to be awake, Frank," she whispered. She knew my name. I kept the gun on her. "Don't move." I called 911. While we waited for the police, she just stared at me with wide, unblinking eyes. She told me she had been living in the crawl space behind the insulation in the attic walls for months. She said she liked to watch me sleep. She said she liked to pretend she was the lady of the house. When the police took her away, they found a sleeping bag and a pile of chicken bones in the crawl space. And they found a peephole she had drilled through the floorboards, directly above my bed in the guest room. She hadn't just been in the attic. She had been watching me sleep every single night, inches above my head. I sold the farm. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't look at the ceiling without wondering if an eye was looking back. Story 2. The Fourth Man in the Trees. I work as a sound tech for a wedding band in the Bay Area. It's decent money, but breaking down equipment at 1 a.m. and hauling subs into a van while everyone else is drunk gets old fast. It was a Tuesday night, well, Wednesday morning, around 2:30 a.m. I was driving back to my apartment in Oakland. I was wired from the adrenaline of the gig, but starving. I pulled into a 24-hour McDonald's off Telegraph Avenue. The drive-through line had 2 cars in it. I ordered my usual, 2 McChickens and a large fry, and pulled forward. While I was waiting at the second window, I looked over at the parking lot. The lobby was closed, obviously, but parked in the furthest, darkest corner of the lot was an old, beat-up beige Volkswagen Jetta. It was backed in. The headlights were off, but the engine was idling. I could see the exhaust puffing in the cool night air. The windows were tinted so dark, they looked like black mirrors. It gave me a weird vibe. Why hang out in a closed parking lot at 2:30 a.m. if you aren't eating? I got my food and pulled out. I wasn't ready to go home to my empty apartment yet, and the food smelled too good to wait. I decided to drive up to Grizzly Peak. It's a winding road along the ridgeline of the Berkeley Hills. There are turnout spots where you can park and see the entire San Francisco skyline. It's usually quiet on weeknights. I drove up the twisting roads, the city lights flickering below me through the eucalyptus trees. I pulled into a gravel turnout that I liked. It was empty. I killed the engine, cracked the window, and started eating. About 5 minutes later, gravel crunched behind me. Headlights swept across my rearview mirror. A car pulled into the turnout and parked about 50 feet away. It was the beige Jetta. My stomach dropped. I hadn't noticed them following me, but the route to Grizzly Peak isn't something you drive by accident. You have to want to go there. I stopped eating. I watched the mirror. The Jetta sat there for a minute. Then, all 4 doors opened simultaneously. 4 guys stepped out. They were young, maybe early 20s, wearing hoodies and baggy jeans. They didn't look at the view. They stood in a circle by the trunk of their car, whispering. They kept glancing over at my car. I didn't like it. I pulled out my phone and FaceTimed my buddy Leo, who lived just down the hill. "Yo," Leo answered, looking groggy. "It's 3 a.m. "Dude, get up here," I whispered. "I'm at the Grizzly turnout. Some sketchy guys followed me from McDonald's." "I need backup." Leo heard the tension in my voice. "I'm 5 minutes away." I waited. The 4 guys were still by their car, smoking cigarettes. When Leo's truck pulled in, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The dynamic changed instantly. 2 cars against 1. I got out to meet Leo. "Thanks for coming, man." "Where are they?" Leo asked. I nodded toward the Jetta. "Over there." We decided to walk up a small trail to a concrete barrier that overlooked the city, trying to act casual. We sat on the wall, eating my fries, keeping an eye on the group. A minute later, we heard footsteps. 3 of the guys were walking toward us. They were laughing, acting loud and drunk. The leader had a neck tattoo and a piercing in his eyebrow. He smiled, but it was aggressive. "Yo," he said, stopping 5 feet from us. "You guys got a lighter?" "No," I said coldly. "We don't smoke." "Cool view, huh?" the guy said, stepping closer. He looked at my McChicken wrapper. "You come from the McDonald's on Telegraph." My blood ran cold. He had followed me. "Why do you ask?" I said, standing up. Leo stood up with me. The guy's smile faded. "Just asking. You got a problem?" His 2 friends fanned out slightly, trying to flank us. The vibe was volatile. They were looking for a fight, or maybe a reason to jump us. But something was nagging at me. I looked at the group. 1, 2, 3. "Where's your friend?" I asked. The leader frowned. "What?" "There were 4 of you," I said. "I saw 4 doors open." "Where is the 4th guy?" The leader's eyes widened slightly. He looked caught off guard. I scanned the darkness. To our right, there was a dense patch of scrub oak and bushes. I saw a shadow move. Someone was crouching in the brush, moving silently toward us from the side. He was holding something long and metallic. A tire iron. "Leo, run!" I screamed. We didn't hesitate. We bolted back toward our cars. "Get him!" the leader shouted. The 3 guys chased us, and the 4th guy burst out of the bushes, swinging the tire iron. He missed Leo's head by inches. We sprinted across the gravel. I dove into my car. Leo dove into his truck. We locked the doors just as the guys reached us. They started kicking our doors, spitting on the windows. I threw the car into reverse, spinning gravel, and nearly sideswiped the Jetta as I peeled out onto the main road. Leo was right behind me. We drove straight to the Berkeley police station. We gave a statement and showed them a photo Leo had managed to snap of the car as we drove away. The police recognized the description of the leader. Apparently, the guy was a former employee of that McDonald's. He had been fired a week ago for harassing a female coworker. There was a restraining order against him. He wasn't supposed to be within 500 feet of the store. The police theorized that he was hanging out in the parking lot, waiting for his ex-girlfriend to get off her shift at 3 a.m. He probably thought I was her ride. Or maybe he was just looking for someone to take his aggression out on while he waited. When they found the Jetta later that night, The trunk was full of stolen tools and zip ties. I don't go to lookouts anymore, and if I see a car idling in the dark, I don't stop. I keep driving. Story 3. The Sanctuary on Blackwater Road. I grew up in a parish just outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Down here, the past doesn't just fade away, it rots. There are plenty of old plantation houses and structures that have been swallowed by the swamp, but we usually stayed away from them. You learn early on that if the structural instability doesn't get you, the squatters or the snakes will. But when you're 17, you think you're invincible. There was a local legend about the St. Jude's Chapel of the Marsh. It was a small wooden church built in the 1920s that had been abandoned after a massive flood in the 90s. It sat at the end of a long, overgrown dirt road that dead-ended into the bayou. One humid Saturday night in October, a group of us decided to check it out. There were 5 of us: me, my best friend Travis, his girlfriend Chloe, and 2 other guys, Mark and Sam. We brought a few flashlights and a cheap bottle of rum, looking for a thrill. We parked my truck where the pavement ended and hiked the last mile. The air was thick with mosquitoes and the smell of sulfur and stagnant water. The church emerged from the darkness like a dying beast. It was listing heavily to the left, sinking into the soft mud. The steeple had collapsed, punching a hole through the roof. "This is a bad idea," Chloe whispered, swatting a mosquito. "It's just an old building," Travis said, pushing open the heavy oak doors. They groaned, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the quiet night. We stepped inside. The floorboards were warped and slick with moisture. The pews were still there, rotting in rows, covered in the thick layer of dust and Spanish moss that had fallen through the roof. We walked toward the altar. It was surprisingly intact, though covered in graffiti. Suddenly, a loud slam echoed from the back of the church. We all jumped. It came from the door leading to the sacristy, the priest's preparation room, behind the altar. "Wind," Mark said nervously. "There is no wind," I pointed out. The air was dead still. Chloe panicked immediately. "I'm leaving. I'm not doing this." She grabbed Travis's arm. Travis, trying to be the protective boyfriend, agreed to walk her back to the truck. Mark went with them. That left just me and Sam. We were the brave ones, or the stupid ones. "We can't leave yet," Sam said, clicking his flashlight on and off. "We haven't seen the back room." We crept toward the door that had slammed. I reached out and turned the handle. It was cold. I pushed it open. The sacristy was small, windowless, and smelled different than the rest of the church. It didn't smell like rot. It smelled like copper and bleach. In the center of the room was an old wooden dresser, likely used for vestments. On top of the dresser was a mirror. It was cracked down the middle. Sam shined his light on the glass. "Whoa," he whispered. "Look at that." Smeared across the glass was a red substance. At first I thought it was spray paint, but it was wet. It glistened in the beam of the flashlight. It looked thick and tacky. Next to the mirror was a photograph. It wasn't an old, yellowed photo from the 1920s. It was a Polaroid. The colors were vivid. It showed a woman in a white wedding dress standing in this exact room. But her face was scratched out, violently. The paper was torn where her head should have been. I touched the edge of the red smear on the mirror. I rubbed it between my fingers. It wasn't paint. It was lipstick. Melted, sticky lipstick. "Sam," I whispered, my voice trembling. "This isn't old. Someone put this here recently." Creak. A floorboard groaned. Not in the room with us. Out in the main sanctuary. We froze. We turned off our flashlights instantly, plunging the room into darkness. We listened. Thump. Drag. Thump. Drag. It was the sound of heavy, wet boots walking down the center aisle, moving toward the altar, moving toward us. "Is that Travis?" Sam hissed. "Travis left," I breathed. The footsteps stopped right outside the sacristy door. We pressed ourselves against the back wall, holding our breath. I could hear Sam's heart beating. Or maybe it was mine. A shadow blocked the light coming from under the doorframe. Someone was standing right there, listening. Then the doorknob slowly began to turn. Squeak! We didn't wait. There was a rotting hole in the floorboards in the corner of the room, leading to the crawl space underneath the church. "Go," I mouthed to Sam. We scrambled for the hole. Sam dropped through first, landing in the mud below. I followed, scraping my back on the jagged wood. As I fell through, the door above us burst open. A beam of light, bright, blinding LED light, swept the room we had just vacated. "Found you," a voice rasped from above. We didn't look up. We belly crawled through the mud and muck under the church, surrounded by spiders and debris, until we reached the lattice skirting on the side of the building. We kicked it out and sprinted into the woods. We ran the entire mile back to the truck. Travis and the others were waiting, terrified, asking where we had been. "Drive!" I screamed, jumping into the bed of the truck. As we sped away down the dirt road, I looked back at the church one last time. Standing in the collapsed window of the steeple, illuminated by the moonlight, was a figure. It wasn't a ghost. It was a man in a tattered tuxedo. He was holding something in his hand. It looked like a machete. We went to the sheriff the next day. They went out to check, but the road was flooded due to heavy rains overnight. By the time they got there a week later, the church had fully collapsed into the swamp. But I know what I saw. Someone had turned that abandoned chapel into a venue for a twisted wedding. And we were almost part of the ceremony.